Hi everyone, I'm Bradstock, Product Director responsible for Google Kubernetes Engine. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have an opportunity to talk about scaling global products as well as scaling global product teams. A little bit about myself. Previous to my current role, I worked on double-click ad exchange at Google. When I joined, it was a small number of people. We were fortunate enough to be part of an experience to grow it into a multi-billion-dollar product that did span the globe. Right now, I am responsible for Google Kubernetes, and this is really unique because not only has it grown a lot internal to Google, we have a massive open source community that's gone from a small number of contributors to literally over 25,000. Obviously, those are not all Googlers, but it does really lead a lot of experience of what happens as you go through those different levels of change and scale. Traditionally, when startups, and many of you are leaders and founders of startups, you think of building out a platform. You start with something raw and new. You start adding support for new dev teams. And then you start adding the ability to handle workload scale and more applications and more teams, and then regional expansion. And then hopefully, and this is an obligatory Canadian reference, which I am, you've gotten that hockey stick growth and gone completely globally. Now, the challenge though, is that as you really scale up and up and up your platform, your developer and team velocity goes down, and support and platform costs go up and up and up. And this really presents a lot of challenges. And almost every single level as you go through this is going to cause an inflection point in your company. Now, what enough people don't think about is how are you actually going to scale your company itself for success? So once again, rather than looking at the tech side of this, which you definitely have to think of both, you're going to start with just code it. It's the go for it. You've got the founding team, you start. From there, you reach that point where it's, hey, we need more people and we need more teams. And then from there, suddenly a wild product manager appears. And this can actually cause a big fundamental change because it's gone from having a founding team to additional people who are responsible for the strategy. From there, and you're scaling just like your platform scales, you're going to start having multiple distinct teams. And from there, you're going to have different ways of doing things. And this can once again present that challenge because that original founding way of doing it, which very much matches one culture, suddenly becomes many different ways of doing things. And this can add friction. From there, and unfortunately, it's the P word, often companies like, oh, we need to regain control. Let's fix it with process. And this is often both bad and good because as you reach those different levels, just like on the tech side and engineering, you have to make sure there is a way to scale efficiently. But some teams go overly process heavy, especially depending who you got brought in to lead different parts of your organization. And that can really sour the culture you're running into. And I think once you've gotten through that, really that gate, and are looking at that global scale, companies reach an inflection point where either strategically you're going to be tops down and it can be this is what we're doing and let's figure it from there, and there's many large corporations to do this, or it's like no, we want to retain the culture and go entirely bottoms up. Now you're going to ebb and flow. Personally, we've gone through when it was very rigid and top down, then we're like, wait, we've taken away agency from our teams, we need to change it, we need to bring it more bottoms up. So this is not a fixed thing. But the culture at the top and what you reinforce when you reach this scale is incredibly important. What I wanted to share is what's the experiences I've seen going through this. And I have made a ton of mistakes. Even now with Kubernetes, we continue to iterate all the time in terms of strategically how we're going to grow product and how we're going to grow the product itself. So a couple of lessons learned. And obligatory Canadian hockey stick as well. I had a giant hockey stick logo, but I figure we didn't actually write that photo, so I had to go with a fairly drab one. Number one, you're going to break multiple times. And if you're not breaking again and again and again and being honest of what's not working, you're really burying a lot of the problems you have. Great example of this is recently with Kubernetes, we've seen huge growth. It's been growing triple digits again and again and again. That's great. But unfortunately, our actual structure and the number of leaders we had to be able to handle this growth wasn't there. We had to get ahead of it and had to reevaluate how we're actually going to structure it and handle really decision-making globally. We'd left that for too long, and then suddenly we had to catch up. Same with how we handle the business. But it's each of those points, often people think of strategy, they don't think of who's actually going to implement it And you've a scaled organization to be able to handle your growth, because good hiring, as you all know, can take 12 to 18 months for the right leader. And you shouldn't rush at these points. But if you're not planning for it, you're going to lag it and suddenly have to catch up when you really reach that pain point. So advice here is make sure you understand and are honest with yourselves and your fellow founders and leaders on what you think is going to break in the future, not just what's broken right now. Number two is that writing is incredibly powerful. I'm not saying I recommend the Amazon way where you silently read the docs beforehand, you slave away in an exact format. I don't think this is actually right for a lot of companies. That's a very rigid culture and a way of enforcing one view of doing things. That said, especially as you go through those transitions we talked about, having things written down is incredibly important as you go through each point. The reason for this is actually there could be slight discrepancies or big discrepancies, and without taking the time to write, and Google Docs is great for this because you can get tons of comments from a global team, you don't know if you're actually aligned. Really good example of this is myself and my co-eng lead for Kubernetes. He and I, when we do strategy, actually get together and then write two separate docs. Privately, same topic, how we view it, because we are really closely aligned. But it was amazing to see the slight differences that really mattered when we compared our two versions of the docs. Then when we work external with the remaining org, we actually made sure it was folded into one, made a clean copy so you couldn't see all the arguments going on ahead of time. But that level of exposure and seeing the exact little details that did matter allowed us to understand where the friction points were. We're like, oh no, yeah, I'm saying the same thing, because often you're not. The second point, it's encouraging your staff and your teams across Eng and product and UX, design, the whole bit, to make sure they're writing as well, because it allows each of the layers to get aligned too. So we actually follow this. We have the strategy doc, we write as a small team, different versions, bring it together. And then within the pillars, because Kubernetes is pretty big, we're doing this as well. The other thing on the writing side, it makes sure you've got a record of what decisions are actually being made. And this is quite important. If it's done via email or side comments, that doesn't work. It also, you as a founder or you as a lead for your company, forces you to actually respond in writing so the decisions aren't made on a side Slack conversation or a late night coffee, but it really does bring a different rigor to you as a leader, and it gives your team the agency to actually push forward an idea and know a decision's being made that's not going to be undone. And lastly is, don't assume you're aligned with your peers. I think the writing was a really good part of this, but the bigger you get, the more distinct views you're going to have from this, and that's going to create a lot of underlying friction. We've got internally within Kubernetes a view of how do we escalate things a lot faster when there is disagreements. I think escalation becomes a bad word for many of you. It feels it's going to be anger and conflict. It doesn't have to be. But if you instead say, okay, we've got a difference that we can't resolve, write it together, figure out how to walk through it. And if you still can't get that alignment, bring it up quickly, but bring it up together. This has really helped scale our org as we started dealing with many different parts of Google, for instance, that may not have the same view. And even if you've got, say, a smaller startup at this point, this is something I think is incredibly important, because often a strong founder, people are afraid, unfortunately, to really give that key view. And then when you ask, oh, do you agree? People are like, yes. So take the time to figure out if you think there's misalignment, use the writing aspect and figure out how you actually stand, because that will avoid a lot of conflict later. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate the time. Please do reach out if you've got any questions to this topic. My email is dbradstock@google.com. Would love to help all of you out.